The term influencers is widely used now in the social media world for people who give you tips on makeup, on your hair and how to dance. But a true influencer has very wide and deep and very meaningful impact on people. And Marcus Nguyen was a true influencer. He had real influence in the tactical community, and he's one of the guys who has received the phone calls from people thanking him for giving them the training that saved their lives. And it's those phone calls that make the job of an instructor, a true instructor, really worthwhile. And Marcus has sadly passed away, and I just want to remember my association with him in this short video. So I first met Marcus. Lofty and I had gone to the United States in 1988. We were hosted by Evan Marshall to present a bodyguard course in Detroit. And I was on the balcony of the course hotel, and Marcus, who was on the course, he was one of the course participants, came over and introduced himself in his very amiable manner. He's a very personable chap, and we got talking and started a conversation that has gone on right until the present time. Found out that he liked Milt Sparks holsters. He had spent time in Japan, as I had, and we hit it off on many levels. And he was a star on the course as well. He was already working in the field. The following year, he hosted us in Minneapolis. He was working for national security there, and he set up a course. Lofty and I went over again, and that was my first visit to Minneapolis. Great city, in the summer anyway. And then as well as the BG course, we did some counter-terrorist training, including a bus option, and Marcus and I played terrorists. On the course was Warren Butler, and Warren was a Federal Air Marshal, and sitting around after class in Evan's hotel room, everyone's talking, telling stories and so on, and Warren told us a bit about being a FAM, Federal Air Marshal. It was a very secretive organization at the time. Anyway, Marcus kind of went off the radar for a bit, and it turned out that he had gone into the FAM pipeline, and then it was about 1990, I think it was. I got a phone call. It was a Sunday night, I always remember it. The phone goes and it's Marcus, and he says, "Guess where I am?" So I said, "No idea." He said, "I'm in London." He said, "Warren's here as well." He said, "But we're flying out, but we're back on Wednesday, and we're staying at this hotel if you want to have a meet. Is it possible?" So I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I got the train down. I got to the hotel. I'm sitting in the lobby having a coffee, and the team arrived. And I met all the guys and girls, Clem, Scotty, Butch, George, Rick, and Warren and Marcus, and I went for dinner. We went into London Chinatown for dinner. We had a really good conversation, and that was the first time I started hearing terms that I later realised were from NLP. And then we kept in touch, and I joined ILFE, International Association of Law Enforcement Firearms Instructors, and in 1991 they were having their annual training conference in Mesa, Arizona, near Phoenix. I'd signed up for it, and Marcus was down at Marana near Tucson training the air marshals, and so he suggested I go out early and go down there and spend a few days, and then he would take me up to Mesa. So I did. He also arranged that when I arrived in the United States at Boston, Rick, who's one of the fam, met me at the gate of the aircraft and whisked me through the procedures and so on, which was very nice. And then I linked up with Marcus and went to Marana, which again was a very kind of secretive place. Various other government organisations and special operations units trained there. And it was really good, and I attended the graduation ceremony for that particular class and met General Steele and so on. Anyway, but one of the days Marcus had to go in to Marana and do some admin, and we were staying in the Conquistador Hotel, beautiful hotel, and his wife Liz was there, his second wife I think she was, and we had a very long breakfast sitting on the veranda, and she told me all about NLP. She'd done an NLP course, and this was fascinating stuff. And I came back to the UK with my head full of all this NLP stuff and decided to pursue it. And Marcus and I kept in touch. We linked up in Milwaukee, for example, and then I stayed with him and Liz in Minneapolis a couple of times. And then after he'd left the fam, he became a private consultant and developed his neural-based training instructional activities. And I brought him over to the UK in '96. We did a couple of courses then. Some of you may have met him then. And then a year later, he always wanted to go to South Africa. So I arranged with Clint. I was doing a course there, and Marcus came over, and we had a great old time there, and he did quite a lot of different things. And in his consultancy, he trained all sorts of people, NASA, Formula One race people, racing cars, one of the top hostage rescue units in the world, and so on. And all the time he was developing these ideas. Now, I took the NLP course under Richard Bandler, and it was a terrific course. It was the full course, and I met a lot of the people, a lot of the instructors, and I've never met anyone who actually used NLP like Marcus did. He lived it. It was part of him. It was natural. It was a language he used. He could sit down, talk to you for 5 minutes, and then give you a reading. He was amazing, and people's jaws used to drop when he'd do this. So as I say, we had a great time in South Africa, and we kept in touch. When Nick Hughes brought me over to the United States, together with Slacky, Marcus came down, and again that was definitely one of the highlights of my life, hanging around with Nick, Marcus, Slacky, telling stories, talking. Obviously we've done a lot of training there, but a lot of the after training time is very, very important as well, and I treasure those memories. I really do. Then Marcus came over in 2000, same year, 2006, to the UK. We were doing the international, and I asked him to do a module, and he presented his neural-based training. And again, I'm sure many of you who are watching this will have been there. It was a true international. We had the guys from South Africa, guys from Norway, and so on. Loads of guys came over, and you know, they all met Mark. A lot of them met Marcus for the first time, and benefited from it. And a lot of those guys kept in touch with Marcus, and he went and did courses for them. He obviously is very well known as a writer. I was privileged to see the manuscript for the first book he wrote, Air Marshals, and also saw extracts from With a Vengeance, and was delighted when they were published. And his first real major book, which originally was called Off the Reservation, but was retitled by the publisher, where it was a big hit, really, and it's kind of a cult classic. So that kind of brings us up to date. He was still pursuing his neural-based training. He was doing Zoom calls with a group of like-minded people. He was always trying to persuade me to get on Zoom. I was in the process of figuring it all out. You know, I said to him, I said, Marcus, I got a fax machine. What more do you want? You know, because back years ago he persuaded me to buy a fax, and we had a good old laugh about that. I was last in contact with him only a week ago, ish, by email. No indication of his ill health in the email whatsoever. And his books are lasting legacy, but his masterwork on neural-based training, which I've reviewed, I'll put the link here, will be really his monument. And in many ways, he was so far ahead of the field that his work has been underappreciated, and I'm sure in the coming years it will be appreciated more. I'm going to put a short video I took of him on the Mind's Eye program in Sweden, talking about state, so that will follow this. But until then, Marcus, to the sunny slopes of long ago.
Physiology, and then 2 is your internal representation. In other words, okay, y'all know when you see me, you're not seeing me. Your brain is reconstructing something inside of it. Your eyes are processing light and the way it plays off of your cone, the retinas. It is sending signals in the optic nerve directly to the brain. And what it does is it creates a internal representation of what's going on out here. In the same way you're hearing, you're digesting, all these things. So a state is made up of 2 pieces. Okay? There's the physiology of it, and then there's the mental representation of it. Okay? How many in here have ever been happy? How many in here have ever been seriously pissed? How many in here has ever been drunk? Be tell the truth. Okay? These are examples of states. Okay? We go through an array of states. And one of the things that we're going to do here very shortly is we're going to experiment with states. One of the things about the performance under stress piece of this is the element of state management. People who perform well under stress, and this was like a huge piece of my research. I went around and interviewed everybody from extremely seasoned combat veterans, fighter pilots, astronauts, pro athletes, race car drivers. I was a consultant for BMW's race. I was their mental coach. NASA's astronauts, the Air Force's fighter people, consultant on the selection program for a whole bunch of different special units. And so with that, in terms of this, the issues that come up over and over again, I look at how are these people able to perform well under stress. And what I found is that there's a fundamental piece, and that fundamental piece is the ability to manage their state, to control themselves essentially. Okay? And what that's built on, there are certain key skills that they have. And then I found out that you can teach somebody these individual skills and they can put it together into a state that works for them. Okay? So these are attributes that very high order, ultimate combat athletes, fighter pilots, top line special operators, Olympic quality athletes all have these attributes. All of them have these. They have superior vision skills. That does not mean perfect vision by any stretch of the imagination. What that means is that they are more efficient in using their visual input. Generally, they have more pronounced peripheral vision, and they use the information coming in according to what their end-use environment is more efficiently. You take fighter pilots as an example. A fighter pilot is in a gunfight at 2 or 3 times the speed of sound. Okay? So they're in a gunfight, they're piloting this aircraft, they're keeping track of all these panels, and they're watching the sky for somebody who's moving just as fast as them. Okay? And they're processing that all. That's their component of situational awareness. What's their primary means of processing information? This. Superior vision skills. Now, you guys all know the OODA loop, right? Is this something that you guys have covered before? Yeah, no? Let me refresh. Okay. OODA.